There it is, South Carolina. Put it up full mass. A man who was out on bail decides to kill his ex in minutes after posting about him. In South Carolina, Cole Carroll was found guilty of murder in the ambush-style shooting of his ex-girlfriend, Donasia Alexus Holloway. Miss Holloway was killed by her ex, with millions watching and many people benefiting from this program called Indisputable. We just need 1% of the viewers to become a paid member so we can continue to bring this content to you. Now back to the show. There's a twist here. Now, he has been sentenced to 60 years in prison. The sentencing happened more than 3 years ago after the incident. The sentence, handed down on April 24th, marked the conclusion to a tragic tale of domestic violence that unfolded over several years, culminating in the senseless murder of Miss Holloway and the subsequent trial that brought Carroll to justice. Prosecutors said Mr. Carroll was enraged when Miss Holloway broke up with him after only several months together because of his abusiveness. So this was not a multi-year relationship. Donasia tried to end this toxic relationship, and she tried to protect herself from her ex-boyfriend's jealous rage, end quote, said prosecutor Hunter Swanson of the 14th Circuit Solicitor's Office. This is the office that brought the case. Quote, but Justin Carroll refused to take no for an answer. He ignored a no contact order, stalked her, and killed her, end quote. Holloway ended the relationship with Carroll in January 2021 after Carroll was arrested for beating her up, leading to charges of domestic assault. 5 months later, May 22nd, 2021, Carroll was out on bail when he showed up again at the Forest Point apartment complex where the woman lived and decided to lay in wait until Miss Holloway returned home. After pulling into the parking lot around 10 p.m., Miss Holloway immediately noticed Carroll's truck, prompting her to lock her doors and park next to a Walterboro police cruiser owned by a neighbor in the complex, hoping that would give her safety. However, this minor defensive step failed to stop Carroll, who was now on foot and walking toward Miss Holloway's silver Lexus. Now, knowing what to expect, Miss Holloway made a split decision to begin recording herself live on Snapchat, which would later reveal Carroll approaching from behind. Quote, follow me to my apartment and I saw him behind me and locked myself in the car. Holloway posted a Snapchat during the final minutes of her life, according to reports. Quote, I've asked him multiple times to leave me alone, trying not to be fed, but this has to stop. Carroll's presence at the complex also put him in violation of a court order to stay away from Holloway, who was now alone in his sight, appealing to social media instead of calling police for help. By the time authorities arrived, it was too late. The police officer whose cruiser Holloway had parked beside rushed outside and discovered the woman shot to death in her front seat. Ms. Holloway was shot 4 times with a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson with fatal wounds to her head and neck. The shooter fired through the car windows, which couldn't protect Holloway. Carroll sped away from the scene, but police caught up with him within hours of the shooting. The same night, Carroll's truck was spotted at a traffic light where police pulled him over and tested his hands for gunshot residue. Due to the domestic abuse case, Carroll immediately became the primary suspect in the murder, and police were soon questioning him about the shooting. But Carroll denied it, said there was no involvement, and then ended the interview by asking for a lawyer. There's more. At the time, police lacked the murder weapon, okay? I want you to hear this. They lacked the murder weapon and any other physical evidence to hold Carroll, so they released him from custody. Although he was not dismissed as a suspect, 2 days later, investigators discovered the social media video recorded by Holloway, with Carroll shown clearly in the background, approaching the woman's car. Multiple witnesses told police they saw a man running to his pickup and peeling off moments after they heard the gun blast. Prosecutors said. Now, I have to provide some nuance, some context to this part. They said they did not have what they needed to hold him. You see, that's a lie. It's called circumstantial evidence. You can hold people for a good amount of time on it. Hell, you can charge people with it. People get indicted for circumstantial evidence. What's the circumstantial evidence? The residue, the gunpowder residue on his hand. Now, they decided because he lawyered up, well, they didn't want that kind of smoke. They don't have more evidence, so they let him go. I guarantee you, if he would have been an African-American male, they would not have let him go, given that he had gun residue fresh on his hands, and the person that he was out on bail for physically abusing is shot dead. Guarantee you he doesn't go home. Now that day, there's more. Notably, Carroll had a head full of hair in the surveillance video, but when he was pulled over hours later, his head and face were clean shaven. The footage, along with evidence of gunshot residue on Carroll's hands and his attempt to erase his phone and change his appearance, ultimately led to his arrest. The video that Holloway posted to Snapchat played a crucial role in Carroll's conviction. Now, there's another point. Law enforcement dropped the ball. They could have easily established his location by doing two things. Number one, a cell tower ping. Get a warrant, do it, establish he was in the area. Hold him on that, circumstantial. You can do it. The second thing they could have done is simply look through the video that records as traffic goes in and out of that general area. If his truck license tag comes up, he's in the area at the time of the murder, you now can hold him. They did none of these things. Hell, I'm not the police, don't want to be. But I know the investigative prowess required in order to make something stick. They did none of this. They just let him walk. There's more. It remains unclear if Holloway was ever aware of Carroll's troubled past. For years before he met Holloway, Carroll, years before they met, Carroll was found guilty of first-degree assault and battery in 2016. Got 8 years probation. However, Carroll had his probation revoked following arrest for unlawful carry of a pistol and possession of a controlled substance, habitual gun violator. He served 3 years in prison before he was released in 2020 and then began dating Holloway. Holloway's mother says she received no solace from Carroll's conviction, which could never make up for the loss of her daughter. Quote, there needs to be harsher punishment for people that do this. They need to stay in jail, stay in prison, because they are only hurting other families, Shamika Holloway told WCSC News. If he would have stayed in jail, our daughter would have been here today, end quote. She said her family was devastated over Holloway's murder, while she criticized the U.S. justice system for not protecting the public against dangerous ex-convicts like Carroll. Quote, it's just so sad to know how the system works. It's awful. They need to do better, Shamika Holloway told the station. Quote, we have a life sentence of heartache and pain that we will carry for the rest of our lives. He had a tapestry of criminal conduct, felony criminal conduct, and it seemed as if he received the lighter end of the sentence every time he was caught and convicted, even if he did a new crime while being on parole for another crime. Still received the lighter end of that judgment. Yasmin, thoughts here?
Yeah, when women say that their biggest threat is men, this is what we mean. I've seen and read so many instances just within the past few days of women being physically intimidated by men. And even in cases where the man isn't necessarily touching the woman, he's still intentionally threatening her. There was that incident with the male ASU professor getting in the face of a female student, yelling at her and calling her derogatory names. Also, I know that we're going to talk about this later in the show. But all of the details of the Stormy Daniel testimony regarding her encounter with Trump, very disturbing stuff. But this is obviously so much worse than those. And those stories made me sick to my stomach. This is terrifying. And while I'm glad that the man was eventually caught and I guess sentenced, it's reactionary. The woman is dead. And that's even with her doing the most that she knew to do in order to protect herself from this man. She ended her relationship with him. She's called the cops on him. She had a no contact order against him. She put him in jail. And not to detract from the tragedy of all of this, but this is a great example of why our penal system doesn't work. It doesn't help to just lock people up. It doesn't make them better. It doesn't prepare them for life on the other side. And it certainly doesn't protect the people in their lives. So this woman's death is really just a failure of our entire criminal justice system on so many levels, as you said.
Yeah, it's so sad. And the irony is, the one piece of evidence that allowed police to connect the dots securely, according to them, was her Snapchat video.